And good morning, everybody. I hope. I hope this starts, and I hope you can hear and see me on this wonderful, what's it? Thursday, the 3rd of January 2025. I am not as wrecked as I was yesterday, which I think is a good thing. It may even lead to me doing stuff. Who knows? Yeah, here we are. Fine. So yeah, I did get some sleep, which helps with the physical exhaustion. Big surprise, I know. But beyond that, so I didn't do much yesterday. Didn't manage to record a video or anything because when I came home from the gym and everything that I did, I was just like completely like physically exhausted. So I took it easy and just did a bit of reading, watched some videos, longer videos that had sort of piled up over the last couple of days. Where I'm like, oh, I want to watch this unlearning economics video on Thomas Sowell, and well, that was like 3 hours of economics talk, and it's certainly helpful to know things, but it's also sometimes takes time. And yeah, I did finish Wizard of the Pigeons yesterday, and it's a really, really good book. I loved it. I mean, not exactly a big surprise there, but certainly something yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a good book. One fun thing though that really is just like just like funny is Wizard of the Pigeons is set in Seattle in the early 80s. Like I mean, the book is written in 1985, and I think it mentions that it should be like 83. Roughly, the date is sort of difficult to explain, but it's probably 1983. Hey Britton, how you doing? I watched your video for the State of Fantasy when I woke up this morning. I haven't commented yet because I still can't comment on Firefox, and I haven't started a different browser to do communication stuff. Yeah, so as I was saying, a fun thing about Wizard of the Pigeons, it's set in Seattle in 1983, and one thing that Wizard often does as a homeless person is try to drink coffee. He has to drink coffee for all kinds of reasons, and so a lot of this is about him figuring out which coffee shop to get to because there he can afford a coffee, or there's a way for him to bum a free coffee, and all of these things. And one of the coffee shops he mentions is obviously Starbucks, and how they have how that one Starbucks has good coffee, and that threw me for a second. And then I realized that, Starbucks was founded in Seattle in the 1970s. So at the time, the Starbucks that this book is talking about is not the super international mega corporation, but just like a coffee shop, one coffee shop. Or in this case, I looked it up, and like in 1983, they had like 3 coffee shops all in Seattle. So this is a very different Starbucks. And it's one of those really weird sort of time capsule events where you're like, this dates the book very, very specifically. But it also switched meaning so completely that, like, unless if you don't look up when this book takes place, if you don't check how old this book is, and you read about Starbucks, you will have a very, very different image in your head when that place is mentioned. But since it takes place in Seattle and it's urban fantasy, evoking a sense of place is essential, and Starbucks was an important landmark in Seattle in the late 70s and early 80s, I guess. Yeah, it's not a big deal, and the book has way more important things to say about trauma and violence and stuff like that. But just just found that bit really funny. So that was just like something that made me smile for a moment. In a book that is otherwise really, really sad, but then again, it's a book about how Vietnam destroyed a lot of people, both those who went to war and those who stayed behind, and how that is kind of bad. So yeah, as I said, it's a really good book, and I I think what also helped it is that being, set in our world and so forth, it's far more political and more direct than Realm of the Elderlings things that Robin Hobb writes. So there's like a whole like thing about domestic violence and how domestic violence is maybe where it kind of comes from and all of that. So that's the kind of thing that Robin Hobb would never put in terms this clearly, but once you realize that, you can see how those themes also come up in her Realm of the Elderlings books, just in a different way. So you can, I think it's reading Wizard of the Pigeons did give me, I guess, context that I will certainly have in mind when I go and reread Realm of the Elderlings, because it deals with similar topics just in a different way. And now I'm reading Blind Sight by Peter Watts, and it is a very good book so far. It is interesting. It certainly, I mean, I'm not that far in yet. It's one of those books that has like 4 chapters or parts, and they're all super massive. Like all of them, like over 100 pages per chapter, possibly 200 pages maybe for the second chapter. So it's it's a oddly structured book. And while I say I'm past the prologue and I'm halfway through chapter 1, that doesn't mean that means I'm further in than I would be in a book where chapters are like 20 pages, right? So I'm probably about like 100 pages into the book, roughly. And it's it's hard sci-fi, but it also has vampires in space, and that's an interesting thing to look at. So yeah, I'm having fun with that one as well. Question is what I'll read after that, because all of these are books that are worth talking about and making videos about, and if I leave them too far behind, I then don't have the. Then I'll have to reread them to refresh my memory, because my memory is bad, at least in these kind of things. So maybe I'll switch it up and go for some nonfiction after this one, after Blind Sight, because somehow reading nonfiction does go into like a different part of my brain, so I can read like a nonfiction or academic book or whatever at the same time as I can read a fiction one, and they don't necessarily cross wires. Although that does, of course, raise the question: if I ever make a video about the Power Broker, because I don't want to reread the Power Broker to make a video, because that's like 66 hours of an audiobook. That's like that's longer than Winded Truth at the moment. But I wanted to read the first part of the Oliver Cromwell biography by Ronald Hutton, because the second one is coming out. The second part is coming out in February, so that would be timely to go through that. And Oliver Cromwell is a much more fascinating character than a lot of people think. Like I did read a bunch of books about Cromwell years ago when I went to what's it called? I had a course on Oliver Cromwell and the the British Civil War, the English Civil War from in the 1640s. I think the whole course at university was actually called Oliver Cromwell. And I did like a presentation talk kind of thing, paper on the sort of image, the image of Cromwell during the age of the glorious revolutions after the restoration in a way, but that also means that you need to look at like other parts of Cromwell's life. So I read a bunch of Oliver Cromwell biographies before, but Hutton being an academic whom I find very interesting, very accessible and often very good at just writing or doing, even giving lectures. There's a bunch of his lectures on like Gresham College's YouTube channel that I highly recommend about, topics like witchcraft and dragons and paganism. So certainly the kind of thing that I find interesting to begin with, and yeah. It might be a nice diversion. I've seen Ada Palmer's next sort of nonfiction academic book is coming out in February, but with academic and nonfiction stuff, chances of that getting an audiobook are much smaller. But it's about the invention of the Renaissance, and that's certainly something, once again, that I'm interested in when it comes to the idea how we sort of define eras that we live in. So that's and I've read books on. I know she's done like one on Lucretius, whereas reading in the Renaissance, and I've read like another book on like the discovery or rediscovery of Lucretius in the 15th, 16th century. I mean, I think she's finished the manuscript, so she's handed in the thing, I guess. So it'll just take a while for editing and stuff like. So I assume this might come out near the end of the year. Same with Cameron Hurley, and there's some others where I'm like, yeah, they will come out as if they come out, then it's the second half of the year, depending on like the turnaround that like these authors and their publishers have. Once again, it's also like a publisher question, right? But I'm definitely, looking forward to that one because Viking book. And there's not that many good Viking stories out there. I've found. I know people love the Bernard Cornwell Saxon stuff, but no more Cornwell for me. And obviously the Bengtsson one, the Longships, is really cool, but getting Vikings right is also very difficult, I feel. All right, Britain, and possibly others. Are you guys ready to do some reading, writing, replying to emails, all of that stuff? Because in that case, we could start, and I could, write a comment to your video, for example. So I'll be back at the top of the hour again, and then we'll talk a bit more, and we'll see where things are taking us today. And I am back after some productivity. Read some emails, wrote some messages, did all of those things, which is good, I think. Hey, Mattia, how are you doing? So, yeah, uh, that's basically what I did. Go through like emails, comments, and so forth. Like yesterday, I was just too physically exhausted to do much, so stuff piled up. But now I'm ready to become more active and maybe do the writing thing. At least the file is already open, so there's that. How do you guys do? How far are you with Yiddish Policemen's Union, Britain? I mean, I assume you're still reading it. And yeah, so yeah, as I said, gonna finish Blindside today and then hopefully move straight on into possibly that first part of the Oliver Cromwell biography. Or maybe start recording videos for Wizard of the Pigeons and what's to say, The Blind Side, and definitely Death of the Author, and so forth. Thing is, I still don't have that many like 2025 like confirmed releases on my list of stuff that I want to read, because obviously there's stuff where I'm like, yeah, sure, I will, but so far they don't have like audiobooks confirmed or anything of the sort, so I'm hesitant to add them to a list, only to then be frustrated because they don't get like an audiobook, and I'm like, ah, damn. But there's enough stuff from last year that I've missed, and new stuff, like even older stuff that I've missed, so I don't think it will get boring anytime soon. Another thing that I need to do today is go and donate blood. Because if I donate blood here, we get some money for that, 28 euros, and I am, well, very much broke until the end of the month. And if I want to buy food, I'd better sell my blood. Now, that's just like a very specific, beginning of January kind of issue, and I do have, like, technically I do have money, but there is that limitation that I can't spend it. Because of the whole like still owing some having some open debts and then shit, so that's a bit frustrating. Certainly feels frustrating to look at your bank account and go like, oh, there's still like enough money to live okay until the end of the month, and it's like, yeah, but you don't get to use that. It's a bit frustrating. So yeah, how did you do, Britain, and how are you still enjoying Yiddish Policemen's Union? Is it still fun? Yeah, I looked a bit around, also looked at the news. Shit's crazy, but that's not exactly new either, so I guess I'll just have to keep my frustrations somewhat pegged down, so I don't, I don't want to get super depressed or anything about politics, but looking at, what's going on in the US right now and seeing that we have like our elections next month, and they are really bad because everyone will vote for the fucking conservatives, who have less and less problems taking over both like ideas from the far right parties in Germany and taking over like Trump stuff. And I'm like, that's that's not the kind of world I want to live in. Yeah, sure. Why not start a Substack? I mean, the frustrating thing with Substack is, once again, that they have no problem having like actual neo-Nazis run their Substacks on their platform, because free speech and so forth, which I don't think is the right approach. They're like, if we have like convicted neo-Nazis who have been thrown off all other platforms, including stuff like PayPal and so forth, and you provide them with a way to get donations and money through their Substack, you're financing like actual neo-Nazis, and that's not a free speech issue. That's a you basically supporting terrorism. But that's certainly one thing that has kept me somewhat at arm's length from Substack, because yes, it's they do that, and they had that whole thing in the end of 2023 where a bunch of like Substack writers wrote an open letter and was like, "Hey guys, are you aware of this?" And then their CEO went, "Well, yeah, we don't care," and even invited some of the more like populist right-wing people on their own podcast, and then a bunch of like the people that I really respect just like left Substack and went to other platforms, but those are super small, and that's usually that's like kind of the problem, right? Like you have these platforms, and once they gain sort of like almost monopoly status, um, it's very difficult to find an audience somewhere else, which is why everyone is on YouTube, and that's so far right that YouTube decides that they don't want you on their platform, and then you have to go to Rumble, and it's the same thing with like Twitter, or used to be Twitter, and although I think that one is actually slowly losing in relevancy. And it's the same thing with Facebook for a long time. And it takes too long for these platforms to fail when they make sort of like dangerous like political decisions in a lot of ways. But if you start a Substack, Britain, what would you plan to, what would you write about there? I mean, politics, or more fantasy book stuff, like, or literature, or something entirely different? I mean, you're a man of many different interests, so I was wondering what that Substack would be like, or if it's just like a blog and you just like put up whatever comes to your mind. Because I'm not sure if that works so well on Substack compared to just having like a thematically sort of like limited thing that you just write about one specific thing. So how far along are you actually with the Yiddish Policemen's Union, though, when you said that you need time to get back to reading it? I was wondering how far in you are, because the book does take some interesting sort of twists and turns in the plot after a while. Getting all mystical and stuff. Yeah, but I think what's good about something like Substack in that regard, or like any blog really, is that it allows you to sort of practice writing. You know what I mean? Because I feel like writing any form of text, whether it's more journalism or more like fiction writing or anything else, really, is something that you just need to do a lot. You need to write words to get more comfortable with it, and I think like a Substack might be a good way to do that, especially if you, go for like whatever doesn't fit anywhere else. It allows you to sort of like expand and experiment more than a YouTube channel that is already sort of locked into one specific sort of trajectory. It does allow you to stretch your muscles there, or like your imagination. I think that might be a good idea. So yeah, certainly looking forward to finding out what you plan to do there. 1/3 into it, I guess. Yeah, that's still before stuff gets super weird. I think that's more Landsman. Probably did they already go out to the island and talk to the Boundary Maven and everything, or is that already, or is that still up ahead in the future? Because it's been like last year, but since I listened to the audiobook, it kind of makes it difficult to compare like page counts and stuff. So yeah, that's roughly what I did. Then I scrolled through like YouTube for a second, seeing what other people are doing. Seems everyone is still talking about Neil Gaiman, which, yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's much to be said anymore about this, except like everyone feels the need to now say something. Although I'd be interested if, say, Bookish Chaz does another video now that there is like more stuff out there compared to what he did last year. Yeah, yeah. That's something she does a couple of times in this book. Ah, so right, that's like when he's at the what's it called? The eatery thing where he goes and eats whatever he eats or doesn't eat, I guess. Okay, yeah, that's that part. Yeah. I mean, he is very much that kind of, not like not a caricature, but certainly Lanzmann is very much the archetype for that specific sort of like hard-boiled kind of character, more than like the noir kind of. I think that's more like the hard-boiled thing in that he's more like, he's the cop who lost it all. He's not the lone wolf kind of guy who just goes and gets constantly proposed by different femme fatales who then take advantage of him. He's more the one who has to I guess he's more MacLaine than than Philip Marlowe in that regard. Yeah, yeah, I get that. I guess I'm just more jaded in that regard, and I was never too much of a fan of Gaiman's stuff in general. Like, I mean, I've read a bunch of his books, and I do really did really or do still really like Good Omens, but so I guess it's easier for me in this regard to just deal with that. Also, as I said, on your thing on Monday, being a heavy metal fan has already given me enough heartache of you know favorite artists and musicians turning out to be massive assholes. So I that's why I'm probably more jaded about this. Which is not necessarily a good thing. It just means compared to some others, it didn't hit so hard this time around. Oh yeah, but don't get me wrong. I'm not happy about it. I'm incredibly frustrated about a lot of it. It's just like probably more the fact that I've gone through this with several bands and musicians and stuff. And I'm like, oh fuck, just another one. Makes it more difficult to trust, to fully trust authors, or like getting fully connected to like an author's work or whatever. I think. And not necessarily just that. It's more that the whole rock and roll world, like from the '70s onwards. If you're a fan of any band that was around in the '70s and in the '80s, chances are they have certainly done dumb shit, to put it mildly. Partly that's because of how certain things kind of go into that world, like how you have a lot of certainly different forms of masculinity, toxicity in there. You have lots of drugs, obviously. Plus, it's the '70s and '80s. Discourse on things like consent and so forth are just not as evolved as they are now. So a lot of stuff that was seen as more or less normal back then just wouldn't fly today. And I think that's certainly something that makes doesn't make it okay, but it certainly is one of the reasons why I think that if you dig enough with like most artists being around in the '70s and '80s, you'll find stuff that wouldn't pass muster today, just because we as sort of several cultures have certainly moved on and into a better place, I think. So that's part of that. But there's also people that just turn out to be massive assholes, like say John Schaffer from Iced Earth, who decided it was a good idea to storm the Capitol in 4 years ago. But then again, I guess he's pardoned now. Yeah, I agree that Britain, especially now, I feel like a lot of people are now just putting stuff out because they feel it's important to do that now for the algorithm and so forth, instead of talking about it when it first came up last July. That's like one thing where I'm like, I don't know, guys, are you doing this because it's sincere? Because then you should have talked about it last year. Anyway, let's be productive for another 45 minutes, and I'll be back around 10-ish, which allows me to then get the earlier bus, and that might be helpful today if I want to get up to the hospital for donating blood in time and all of that. So yeah, see you guys around in 45, and good luck with stuff. And should you go to sleep until then, in the meantime, Britain, then good night, and we'll talk later somewhere on some Discord or whatever, I guess. Hello, I am back, and let's make this as quick as possible because I got to run to catch a bus and all of that. I did get some stuff done. Not much writing though, but I did finally set up the live stream for Saturday, which will be the normal live stream thing where we talk about stuff. So yeah, thanks for hanging out and all of that. I'll see you probably tomorrow with another live stream, unless like sprints, unless something goes wrong. And if all goes well, there will finally be a video today, either the on Stranger Tides video or something else that I come up with in the meantime. I've kind of thought about it. It's like, if I don't manage to re-record the On Stranger Tides thing today, I'll just like upload, like publish it, the one that I have, and go with the flow and just like say fuck it. Something I'm really struggling with always, but you know, sometimes you got to force yourself to do things. So yeah, thanks for hanging out again. As I said, I appreciate that. These are very strange times, but you know, what can you do? All right.